What up, what up? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this show, we talk about crowdfunding. We talk about how you can get your projects funded. We talk about how to actually get a river of traffic to your campaign, how to blow up when it comes to your crowdfunding campaign. And you can go back to the archives of this show. We got also so many new episodes in the hopper that are about to come out with incredible guests. But I think one of the greatest resources as well is just the archives of this podcast. So you can actually go back, you can see some of the incredible interviews that I've done, people who have come on this show and shared with you how they've raised 6 and 7 figures when it comes to their crowdfunding campaigns. It's telling you exactly what they did in order to get funding, exactly what they did to drive traffic. How did they get eyeballs? How did they get attention? And in so many cases, this is actually their first campaign. You'll also hear from guests who have had literally 10, 12, 20 campaigns that they've done, and they turn this into an engine where they can just launch again and again and again. That's the same thing that I want for you, my friend. So I really started this podcast to kind of bring to you the things that work, the things that are proven to get results when it comes to this industry with crowdfunding, right? So how do you get people to show up? How do you actually promote this campaign? How do you raise funds? All that kind of stuff I cover on this show. And I think to me, one of the coolest things about doing one of these campaigns is that, man, you have international attention. You can launch this thing, you can have an explosive launch, and you can get attraction literally from all over the world of people discovering you, whether you're doing a startup, you're doing a physical product, you're doing a gadget, a gizmo, a board game, something more creative. You can do it all when it comes to crowdfunding. One of the new things, one of the new kids on the block is this platform called WeFunder, which is where you can actually raise capital on WeFunder from people that are out there that are looking to invest in your campaign. So this is what I call, equity crowdfunding or regulation crowdfunding. This is where basically the people that are participating in your crowdfunding campaign are actually investors in your company. So if you've ever been thinking about raising investment capital, you've been wanting to use crowdfunding in order to do that, you can now do that based on these new rules and regulations, which have recently been announced. You can raise upwards of $5 million doing this. And these guys came on my show and they're like, Sal, we have an incredible story to share with your audience. You can actually own a part of a 3 global young adult movie franchise sequel, and it's produced for major studio release. So these guys came on my show and they're like, Sal, we have an incredible story that we want to share with your listeners. We're able to raise $840,000 and then to share with you exactly on this episode what they did to make that happen. If you've ever thought of maybe raising money for more of like an entertainment style business, or even if you want to use regulation crowdfunding, this is a great primer episode for you just to discover the power of the crowd. The fact you can raise $840,000+ using WeFunder and really just catapulting your success. And think about that. If you had $840,000, what would you put that towards? What kind of development would you use those funds for? And you can do that all obviously when it comes to regulation crowdfunding. So first of all, if you're interested in learning more about regulation crowdfunding and equity crowdfunding specifically, I have a great book out there, and Audible is doing a deal where you can actually get a free copy of this book. So if you want to just kind of dip your toes in the water, this is a great opportunity to do that. You go to a link at crowdcrux.com/equity-audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/equity-audio. Go to that link and you can download a free copy of the Equity Crowdfunding Explained Audible book at crowdcrux.com/equity-audio. In addition, if you just want to kind of dip your toes in the water again, and you don't want to commit to this necessarily, but just kind of want to learn a little bit more about equity crowdfunding, how this can work for you, regulation crowdfunding, how can you raise money using crowdfunding from a bunch of investors around the world and raise upwards of $5 million under today's regulations to be able to do that. You can also check out this free course I'm about to mention. Enter your name and email and start getting some emails from me in terms of how to actually do one of these campaigns, what is working to get funding, some of the other things I've discovered behind the scenes that are really, just working wonders when it comes to getting people to actually show up to this campaign. Go to this link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/equity course. That link is crowdcrux.com/equity course, crowdcrux.com/equity course. Enter your name and email, and you'll start getting some emails from me, warming you up and kind of bringing you through this in a step-by-step fashion. That being said, let's dive into today's podcast episode and learn how these guys were able to raise $840,000+, specifically $409,000 for this incredible campaign. And it's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have an incredible team on the show who has literally smashed their goal when it comes to WeFunder, have done a bunch of different interesting projects as well. They've already done a six-figure campaign with some really interesting techniques. And we have two of the individuals here on the show. We have Steven and we also have Jason. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks Salvador.
So do you think you can get started, maybe for the listeners who aren't in front of their computer? Can you just describe a little bit about this raise, your company, what your mission is really here and what you're trying to do?
We are a major motion picture producer and TV series as well. We only produce movies and series that are watched by the whole world globally and by major studios. And in order to do that, we have to raise development capital separately from our production capital. The production capital we get from the bank, and this has been done, it's like a well-oiled machine. It's been done by the very best in the business a long time. Our partner, John Lee, he actually wrote the book on it, we like to say. It's a book that's very popular.
It's used in most film schools, the Producer's Business. God, what is it called, Jay? I keep forgetting the name of that title.
The Producer's Business Handbook.
Producer's Business Handbook, yeah.
4th edition.
Almost every major film school uses that book to describe this process.
Yeah.
And in terms of the campaign, is it for a specific film? Is it for a couple of films? Is it for this handbook? What sort of is the crux of the raise there?
Oh, sure. So there's a novel series that's on Amazon right now called Calculated. First book is Calculated, second book is Simulated, third book is Activated by author Nova McBee. And we have the film rights to this series. And so the first raise we did on WeFunder was for the first story, Calculated. And we ended up raising $2.35 million in 11 months, so 1.4 of it on WeFunder.
Congratulations. And then this new one is for the subsequent books, I assume, or?
Yeah, the sequels. It's called Calculated Sequels Offering.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We're raising half of the raise on WeFunder, and the other half, we're launching a new reggae website, kind of like a rally road, but for the film industry.
Very cool. Very cool. And in terms of producing these, I mean, you guys obviously have extensive experience here. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been creating these films and commercializing that?
So our partner, John Lee, he's the longest track record. He's been in the entertainment industry for 30 plus years, and he's done various roles on multiple major motion pictures, whether it's rights acquisitions or license agreements. Various roles in those films, totaling $4 billion in revenue. So my experience is less on the business side, more on the creative. I've been a director of photography and editor for some national television shows, a feature film that's on Amazon. I've been in the entertainment industry for about 13 years as a creative.
I'm new. I've actually been in education, teaching, and acquiring quite a long list of novels that I want to turn into films. But I joined... I pioneered the company with John about 4 years ago now.
So it's been 4 years, and obviously you're bringing that kind of artistic bent, right? Both of you to the project, and really, have you ever heard about something like this where you can actually get funding online when it comes to your art and your crafts, and be able to actually do that in a larger way?
What I was saying when we first got on is that we do major motion pictures and series, and we have not seen anyone else do that in particular, because when you separate the development capital, the $2 million we raised for Calculated was only to develop it. And the $50 million budget we have for the production will come from a bank loan. So in a lot of ways, it's like real estate, where you put some money down to develop it, but then you get a bank loan to actually build it.
Yeah, I imagine at the moment people are asking, like, well, how can you say you're only making major motion pictures? It's in the goal and the process. I've been a part of indie films before, where you've gone out to investors and they provide maybe up to $1 million for the entire production of a film, which I was the DP on. And then oftentimes there isn't much thought for distribution. How are we going to distribute this film once we make it? And so that's where we're completely different, is that we say we're producing major motion pictures because our plan is to get distribution long beforehand. And that's the strategy, is to develop the film until it becomes IP that can be collateralized through bank loans, that studios will want to be on board with and will want to have some distribution rights. So that way, it is, once the film is made and produced and actually edited, there's already distribution contracts signed. We know where the film's going to go, et cetera.
What made you passionate about this story specifically?
Well, frankly, Stephen, I think you'd admit this as well. We're too busy at this stage in our lives to be reading too many novels. But John and I were approached by another good friend who, and actually my first partner, she brought us this novel. And after about a month of badgering me, I finally read it and I was swept off my feet. I literally have not found another book or series even by a modern writer that can capture my attention like this one.
What I would say is that I feel like in the last few decades, I mean, I'm 47 years old, so I grew up with, the first Superman, and where good and evil kind of had really these delineations, and the idealistic kindness and selflessness and helping others was obvious in characters. Superman was selfless and helped others, and the evil characters were opposite. I feel like now in the last couple of decades, the lines have been blurred so much with characters where I don't want to aspire to be like any of the characters in movies because they exude such negative characteristics. Like, who's the hero?
Right.
But in this story, Calculated, it is just such an inspiring person who is trying to be selfless while still having almost like a revengeful thought process that she has to suppress through her mentor. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't really go too many details in the story without just telling you the whole thing. But the story is just so inspiring and uplifting. It's a new kind of storytelling that I've really not in a few decades.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's really connected as well with a huge base of people. Could you talk just a tiny bit about that?
Yeah, the buzz around the novel series is just astounding. People have always, read the first one and then say, this is just amazing. They get the second one and go, oh my gosh, how could it get any better? And then the third novel, everybody's saying it's even better than the first two. And there's just a crowd and a fan base around right now that's really energetic and electric.
One of the things we did early on is we'd give the book either in PDF or, Kindle form or paperback to everyone who invested in it. I think that was smart because the groundswell of everyone who's read this, it's just everyone who reads it can't get enough of it.
And what kind of messages do you feel like it kind of shares with, either parents or people who are in the young adult kind of arena? What kind of messages do you feel like that book or that story kind of shares with them?
Hope in the darkest of circumstances, a resolve to fight your way through and to do it in a way that is just. It really embodies a lot of wholesome characteristics. And the dark in stories, you're always looking for the dark and the light. And sometimes the dark is just so dark and the light can't compare, or the light is displayed in a really lame way. In this story, the dark, the foe, the antagonist is very corrupt and very dark. Yet the light and the hope in the story is so diametrically opposed. There's a great contrast in the story, which makes the story so powerful.
So it's kind of
I was just going to add that there's some really great archetypes in this story. There's a Gandalf kind of figure that is one of my favorite mentors in any novel series I've ever read. He's like a Chinese sage, and he guides her in her darkest time and teaches her some really essential things, including several dialects of Chinese. And later on, it keeps coming back to her, and she keeps growing more and more in her strength and moral fiber and stuff.
For you, what do you feel like are some of those obstacles that you've pushed past in order to get massive funding for this online and for also people to start to connect with this and really wanting to see a film around this? What are some of those obstacles that you've had to push through?
This is the really exciting part because we hit many. You ever watch like you're downloading something with kind of bad internet and it shoots up for a second and then it just halts? You're like, why is it halting? It was kind of like that with our Raise for a Bit, where we started and getting family and friends on board was like pulling teeth. We just, we were a new company and we didn't have a lot of connections. And, according to the experts in the arena, we had none of the characteristics that were needed to. We've heard that you need at least $100,000 of friends and family. If you don't, it's kind of a litmus test whether you're going to fail or not. Well, we didn't have anything. We had about 8 to 10,000 of family and friends. And we also didn't have necessarily, the company had no marketing money to begin with to even run Facebook ads. So took out a loan for $15,000 for the first month of marketing, kind of in faith that it would do something. And from that $15,000, we brought in $150,000. And then, we hit roadblocks along the way. And close to the end, we were stuck at like 1.35 million, something like that. we're just going nowhere. A month went by with only a couple $1,000s that came in, and really had to just take a step back and just ponder and kind of ask God, what am I supposed to do here? What can we do that's different? And this idea for T-shirts came into my mind. A stupid idea for T-shirts, I would say, but it actually really worked. We invited investors who would invest a second time. We'd send you an exclusive T-shirt, and we had people messaging us saying, "Hey, if I send you $10,000, can I get one for my son too?"
That was awesome.
And within a week, we jumped up 300,000, I think, from that T-shirt push. It wasn't all from the T-shirts, but it caused an electrical surge again in the process.
There's another aspect that actually came from Stephen as well. I think it was earlier in the process, but one of the themes, it's not the central theme, but one of the themes in the book is human trafficking. And so it just came into Stephen's heart. Like, we need to actually give I'm tired of bake sales and all these kinds of things going to these organizations that are trying to fight human trafficking. Let's make the largest single donation in history to, in particular, we started working with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. They like to be called NCOSE. But so we actually reached out to them, and they got excited and partnered with us, and they shared with their people about our raise, and that brought in at least 200,000 or 300,000. I'd say.
Yeah, it was a large amount.
I mean, it's such a huge testament to that people believe, right, in your vision, and they're really seeing that in the same way that you are. I think that's a huge testament to that.
Yeah.
I think sorry.
I was going to say, the other thing you can blame Stephen for as well is we communicated via video updates every single week with our investors. And that seems to be that, and the stories seem to be the two keys that really made a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. There's the three things that I feel like you cannot just rely on when you're doing crowdfunding. You cannot just simply rely on like Facebook ads. Hey, if I had $100,000 for marketing money, Facebook ads, it's not going to work. You have to have Jason is amazing at reaching out to people. He's never ending on emails and phone calls, reaching out to people who might want to partner. And that's played an enormous role in the raise. But like Jay said, these updates that we do, WeFunder kind of stipulates that you keep your investors updated once a quarter. And I thought, well, we need to just keep our investors constantly updated, because I'm an investor in some other projects, rather large amount of investment in other projects, and I want to know what's happening. So we figured, well, our investors also want to know what's happening, good or bad. If there's a setback, I want to know. They're going to want to know. In fact, one of the statements from one of our investors said, I can weather any setback as long as I know what's going on. So we've been committed to being very transparent with what's going on in the raise and in the project, good or bad. And we had a period of time where we had no updates on whether we had a world-class writer for this screenplay for like 6 or 7 months.
That was so painful.
So painful.
I was just to read as well some of the people who have been commenting here, like looking at Hamish, right? He says, "Great team. I've enjoyed the update videos from the first campaign. Keep it up." You have a guy named Edward who said, "I invested because I was already in the first part of this investment, and the storyline caught my eye. Sounded like a great idea for a movie." You had another person, Melvin, who said, "My dreams have been about writing and directing stories of my own. And as an investor, I can now recharge those aspirations into realistic someday."
Love that.
So in a certain sense, you're allowing people to participate, right? You're allowing them to participate in the creative process and to get something out there.
Yep. I mean, the amount of comments we receive on each update is significant. And we respond to as many, almost every single one of them. I don't know that if anybody has a question, I don't know there's any questions that go unanswered.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, all three partners have definitely been surprised by the amazing experience we've had with this crowd of investors. We've now got over 1,300, Stephen?
Something like that. Yeah.
But it's all so positive and encouraging. It's just amazing.
And I think it's also just the connection as well to the story and the team, right? And those are two big ones. One thing we haven't really talked about, though, and I think this honestly is one of the biggest pushbacks, right, that people get is investing in a film. Like, I thought films lose money, right? Or investing in something like that. Isn't that risky? What are your thoughts about that and the business plan you guys have kind of thought about when it comes to that?
The notion that films lose money is well, has to be delineated into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's two types of indie films. There's an indie film, like I said earlier, that takes their entire investment of production and everything from investors. And really just once they finally hit that threshold where they can make the movie, then they make it. But no thought has been given, or very little thought has been given to distribution. The question is, do people want the movie? We know that the creator of the movie often wants the movie, but does the audience want it? Will they pay money for it? So that question is often not addressed. And that's why movies often lose money. Where in our process, we don't even pick a project. We won't even begin this development phase that we're doing right now until we've done an extreme in-depth greenlight analysis, whether this film is marketable or not, based on a decade we call calculation. Jason can talk a little bit more about it. Whether this film has a potential to make at least 2 times its production costs. In addition to that, like I said earlier, we are setting up distribution before the film is ever made. So if we don't have distribution set, the film doesn't get shot. So the money isn't wasted on that.
It goes back to, do you care about the business side as much as you care about the creative side? And that's what Clint Eastwood's Malpaso, Ron Howard, Imagine Entertainment. This is the same business model that provides about 70 to 75% of all the major movies we watch around the world by the major producers. John, has codified that business model into his book, The Producer's Business Handbook. And that's what we follow because, if you don't set the distribution before you produce the movie, that's just bad business. Like, that's just dumb. Why would you risk your own? I mean, it takes a lot to produce a film, frankly.
Yeah. And there's been a few success stories. And I think oftentimes indie producers that only fund production look at those success stories and go, yeah, we can be that too. Examples like Napoleon Dynamite, this high school kid who made a movie for $300,000. At least that's what I've heard. And it became very successful. But I think one of the examples that we used was in 2018 or so, there's about 13,000 independent films that are produced funding the production alone. And then they go to the film festival circuit. And then only about 5 of those films in 2018 got picked up for distribution. So it is correct when you say that films usually lose money when they're done like that.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to insult those who do it like that. It's just that the business model isn't known. And that's where we're trying to help people understand the business model needs to be more complete.
Yeah, and I just also would add to that as well, the fact that you guys have a lot of experience, right? You've really pulled together a great team. And a lot of the times when you're coming together with a new project, you might have the creative side, but you don't have the business side down, right? Or vice versa. You got the business side down and you have a really crappy creative, right? And it's just a horrible.
True. You have to treat each one equally important. The production people always call the business people the bean counters and they're frustrated with them, and vice versa. Well, thankfully on our team, we have people who are on both sides of that fence.
When you're doing these things as well, when you're involving the fans, what you talked about, like t-shirts, for example, why do you think that's so special for them? Why do you think that's something that they're willing to invest thousands of dollars more and really get involved, even just to have a t-shirt or to have their voice heard? Why do you feel like that's so special for them?
I think people recognize that this story, the Calculated series, is as strong as a series as The Hunger Games or Twilight, and they realize what this is going to become. And if they can get some exclusive stuff that can't be owned by anybody else except an investor, I think they get excited about that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that on our first raise, the average investment was $1,500.
Incredible.
And it's just to open something up to the average person. I mean, normally in Hollywood, you pretty much have to not only have a ton of money, but you have to be kind of an insider to invest in films. So this is kind of new for people to be able to participate in.
That is one important thing to note. What Jay said about the average investment. We've seen other raises that have succeeded at raising their full $2 million. I was following another raise that was similar to ours in dollar amount, and they received their full amount at the same time as us, but they had double the amount of investors, which means each investor is only buying in for half the amount. And we're seeing the investors on this new raise on WeFunder, the average investment is now $2,500. So people, my point is that they're seeing great value in this beyond the typical minimum $100, $200.
On that note, we've also seen a lot of investors reinvest over and over.
Yeah.
So one question here, for those that are listening and they're kind of like, this is insane, this is crazy, right? That not only you guys can engage the fans in this way, but also do it in repeatable, fashion over a course of time. For two people who, you've said yourself, you felt like you didn't necessarily know every single step of the way what you were doing, right? Or there were certain obstacles that were coming there. What do you feel like kind of helped you get a better sense of what to do? Were you just spending a lot of time reading online? Were you watching videos? Were you studying other campaigns? How did you really begin to get that confidence and execute on this?
For me, initially, the first thing I did before we knew how to do anything was we looked at success stories, successful companies like Legion M, for example. And I loved their promo video. By the way, on Calculator, we actually partnered with Legion M, and a lot of their investors became our investors, and we have a good partnership with them. But I watched their promo video, and it was so inspiring. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make our first promo video as much like theirs as possible. And the greatest form of what do you call it? I'm losing that phrase.
Is flattery is imitation, I think.
There you go, something like that. So it was really copying them and their energy. And then we thought, well, whatever we could do that's better than they're doing, let's just try it. Let's just try anything and everything. It's really this relentless push to find new ways of inspiring people. We can't just rest on like, well, gosh, we're spending a lot of money on ads. How come nothing's coming in? Well, just keep spending money. No, that's not the answer. It's get creative. Yeah. And just go for a long walk and think, what would inspire me to become involved in this project? And if it would inspire me, then maybe it'll inspire somebody else.
Yeah. And, Stephen pointed out, I do reach out to a lot of people. He and John don't realize how many people turn me down.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. And it takes guts, honestly, to not only put out those kinds of creative work, but also to reach out to people. It takes guts, especially like what happens if this thing flops, right? What happens if I announce this and like no one invests in it? I'm sure those thoughts must have gone through your mind. What did it really feel like when you started to get funding coming in the door? You started to have people actually, engage with this? What did that feel like for you guys?
I think even right now, we opened up our new investment and we have projections, and we projected that by the end of April, beginning of May, we would have $350,000 raised in our second raise. And we hit 700 and something thousand dollars. No, we hit $600,000 in a couple of days. And so it blew our minds. But this morning, I didn't wake up with this relaxed feeling going like, yeah, we're doing great, nothing to worry about. I thought, no, we need to continue to think of new ways because it could stop right now. Mm-hmm. And so there's very few elation moments, if you know what I mean. It's very satisfying, but then there's always this trepidation to continue to push because at any moment, if you don't keep pushing, the ball stops rolling.
We read all of our comments, every single investor. And one, I got to know her better, actually. She was homeless. And wow. She somehow scraped together $100, which is the minimum, and she invested.
Oh my gosh.
We feel such a weight of responsibility. Yeah. We take our business very seriously, every dollar as if it was given to us by our grandma. Like we just...
Yeah, very cautious with our ad spends. And we do, our marketing guy is amazing. That's okay. Let me touch on that real quick because marketing is a dangerous thing because we've hired 3 or 4 different marketing companies and we finally landed on one guy we really trust. Yeah. Because there are marketing companies out there that'll screw you. Yeah, I mean, they're out there to simply take an upfront fee and then do some busy work, make you feel like that they're doing something for you. They really have no intention of helping you succeed. And we experienced that once. And then other times, marketing company just wasn't aware of changes in technology in the industry. We were aware of changes and they weren't. Like, well, how can we as non-marketers be aware of things and you as a marketer not aware of it? Finding the right marketing company is really crucial, and finding someone you trust who cares about your raise is very important.
Yeah.
And by marketing, do you mean like doing ads and stuff like that, or do you mean pulling together the actual page? What are you referring to when you say marketing?
Well, yeah, sorry, because we create all our ad material, so that's not what I mean. What I mean is someone who is going to do the ad spend for you. Because, for example, Facebook is still the biggest bread and butter for marketing, and with changes in privacy from Apple last January, a year ago January, it just changed the way you market. You used to be able to retarget and to choose your audience much better, and you knew what was happening. And then it became very difficult, and you had to have somebody who was really smart on the other end buying the ads and targeting the people so that you weren't wasting your money. Because you can spend $100 and only get one investor, and that investor invests $100. So then what happens? All you've done is wasted time and money.
Didn't we have like 10 or 12x up until that moment?
Yeah, we did. Up until January of last year, our Facebook ads, it's something called a ROAS, or return on ad spend. For those who don't know the lingo, for every dollar we spent, we would get $10 in, which is really unheard of.
Yeah.
Usually like a 4x is really great, but we had 10, 11x for months on end until this Apple change, the privacy change.
Overnight. Done.
Yeah, overnight. And then we ended up with like a 2x. And 2x is just not worth it, which means we'd have to spend $1 million to raise $2 million. And we weren't willing to do that, obviously. So we had to regroup and hire this guy who just knew what he was doing. Yeah. And he got our ROAS back up to 4 to 5 again, and then 6 to 7. But finding that person is critical.
Yeah, 100%. So, we're kind of coming to the end of the interview. So first of all, where can people go to learn a little bit more about your campaign? I've definitely been inspired just hearing about how other people are taking action. I'm sure you have a very fascinating story we don't just have time to go through. Where can people go to learn a little bit more?
They can go to two different places. On WeFunder, it's wefunder.com/calculated sequels. There's no dots, no spaces, just calculated sequels. And then our website is onedoorstudios.com. That's ONEDOOR studios.com.
Yeah.
Great. And one follow-up question there when it comes to this, for others out there that are on the creative side and that were maybe thinking or doing like more of a traditional campaign, and then they're hearing this, like, this is so cool, you can get investors. Do you have any advice for someone who's just kind of maybe getting started? They have a couple of creative projects under their belt. How could they really dip their toes into something like this, even in a smaller way?
I do, actually. And I have to admit, I've talked to over 100 people in that exact same boat all over the world. John and I used to travel to China and he would teach. Number one, get the book by John Lee called The Producer's Business Handbook, 4th edition.
It's on Amazon.
Devour that. Number two, make sure that you're willing to change your paradigm. Like, it's a massive paradigm shift. You're basically taking all the teaching that some of your own teachers in your own business class, unfortunately, even in film schools, they'll teach you to just get a credit card and just hit the film festival route and just do that model. It's a terrible business model. Don't do it. And 3, be willing to try equity crowdfunding and learn how to do it and go for it.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have anything else to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, I just, the notion, and I hate to say this, but the notion that movie Field of Dreams kind of ruined a lot of people. It's a great movie. But what I mean is the notion, if you build it, they will come. It's kind of false. And so just because you have a great passion project and you succeed at creating it, doesn't mean that the people will come. Just step back and be a little more pragmatic about what you're doing and ask yourself, is what I'm doing valid? I love a phrase from Elon Musk. He said, the worst mistake you can make is optimizing something that was never meant to exist. Find out whether it needs to exist first before you optimize it.
Awesome, guys. Well, first of all, congratulations on your success. And second of all, I love the way that you're bringing together these two different disciplines when it comes to business and also creativity to bring interesting stories into the world, inspiring people, and also doing it in a way that hopefully is going to be profitable for them and, by the book, literally, right, in order to, increase profitability and hopefully also get some people involved in funding films. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate you guys so much for coming on the show, and looking forward to where your race goes from here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me here on the show. And also, as you're going to be getting access to just learning about what works well when it comes to regulation crowdfunding, WeFunder, how to actually get people to show up, how to get people to invest in your campaign. I hope that you're taking some of these tidbits and you will take action on this, whether you're listening to this in the car, whether you're listening on the way to work, if you're listening at the gym, doing laundry, whatever it is you're trying to do, right? I really hope that you can kind of just continue to download this information to your head. So number one, best thing you can do is just start to binge listen to this podcast, man. And it made it so easy for you just to tap into crowdfunding gold, just sink your teeth into all these other incredible guests that we've had on. Really use this to your advantage. Because again, hearing it from the horse's mouth, hearing what's working right now when it comes to crowdfunding is one of the best ways in which you can be successful. And also, you're surrounding yourselves with the greats. You're surrounding yourselves with people who are doing 6- and 7-figure campaigns. And that is definitely one of the ways to be the surest path to success, and to just kind of put that on light speed. In addition, like I mentioned, if you want to learn more about this, I got a great book out there, which you can check out at crowdcrux.com/equity audio. That will take you to Equity Crowdfunding Explained. You can get a free copy of that on Audible when you sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible. And they're doing a promo on that, so I don't know how long that deal is going to last. But you definitely want to check that out at crowdcrux.com/equity audio. In addition, I've had more and more people who are interested in doing these kinds of WeFunder campaigns, and they kind of want to just pick my brain when it comes to how to actually do this. Is this a good fit for you, your startup, your company? Is this something you can be successful at? Hey, Sal, is this something I should be doing maybe instead of Indiegogo or Kickstarter? Or is this something I can do in conjunction with that? What would the timeline be like if I want to raise capital? How onerous is it when it comes to compliance or reporting? Or do I need even audited financials? And honestly, if you're only raising a little bit, you don't necessarily have to have that. So if you're doing very little in terms of under 100K, it's going to be really easy for you to do one of these campaigns. Even under 250K, it's going to be really easy from a compliance standpoint. So if you want to learn more about that, you can always book a one-on-one coaching call with me. And also when it comes to that, so many people have gone at the end of that call. I've been able to earn them way more when it comes to their launch in terms of, thousands, tens of thousands of more when it comes to their campaigns. In addition, saving them tons of money going into a campaign. I was really just kind of laying the step-by-step foundations to that. So what do you have to do from A to Z? What are the things you should know? Giving you feedback as well on the materials that you have. If that sounds interesting to you, want to book a one-on-one coaching call with me, you can go to the link I'm about to mention, and you can schedule that ASAP for an intensive coaching call with me, with Sal. You can go to the link at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching. Just enter some information, give me a little bit of idea of what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to do, and we can get that call scheduled ASAP. So thank you so much for listening to this show. Go and check out some of the other episodes we got out there. Give me a rating and review on iTunes. If you're listening to this on Spotify or on iTunes, or if you're watching on YouTube, please give me a thumbs up. Come subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Show some love. Thank you so much. And man, you've been showing up, and that is one of the number one keys to success. The fact that you're showing up, you're listening to these episodes, you're dialed into what's working. I commend you so much, and thank you so much for being a supporter of mine. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.